I thank the gentleman for yielding. And, Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of final passage of the Promoting a Resolution to the Tibet-China Dispute Act, legislation that I was proud to have authored. The House took the lead in considering this bill, passed it with an overwhelming majority last February, and sent it to the Senate. The Senate, in its wisdom, changed one paragraph, one. So the bill has come back to this chamber for final passage. I want to thank my incredible co-lead, Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman McCaul and Ranking Member Meeks, for bringing this bill to the floor and for all of their incredible advocacy on behalf of the Tibetan community. And I welcome the opportunity to shine a light on this legislation once more as we send it on its way to the President's desk. It has been more than 60 years since the People's Republic of China forced the 14th Dalai Lama into exile and took control of Tibet against the will of its people. The dispute between the Chinese and the Tibetans over governance of Tibet has persisted ever since, even though the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people have repeatedly expressed their willingness to engage in dialogue. Meanwhile, the PRC has done everything it can to erode Tibetan history, language, culture, and religion. In other words, to erase the Tibetans as a people. And this bill seeks to end that. One, by explicitly recognizing that the Tibetan people are a people with a distinct religious, cultural, linguistic, and historical identity. Two, by reminding everyone concerned that the Tibetan people have a right to self-determination under international human rights law. And three, by requiring the U.S. government to actively counter the PRC's propaganda about Tibet, like the false claim that Tibet has been a part of China since ancient times, a position that the United States has never accepted. With this bill, we hope to restart dialogue between Tibet and China, in keeping with long-standing U.S. policy. Mr. Speaker, the world is awash in conflict, and at the heart of many conflicts lies this systematic denial of a people's human rights. And the decades-old dispute between Tibet and China started as an armed conflict of invasion, resistance, and insurgency. In the long run, the only guarantee against the resumption of violence is for the PRC to fully respect the human rights and dignity of the Tibetan people. A vote for this bill is a vote to recognize the rights of the Tibetan people, and it is a vote to insist on resolving the dispute between Tibet and the People's Republic of China peacefully, in accordance with international law, through dialogue and without preconditions. So I urge my colleagues to please join me and the distinguished chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. McCaul, in sending these important messages in solidarity with the Tibetan people. And I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts for yielding me the time, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This body has always stood for the principles of free speech, independence, and individual liberty. I want to thank my dear friend, good friend, Mr. McGovern, for his efforts on this important legislation, as well as Ranking Member Meeks and Representative Bill Keating, who worked with me to advance this bipartisan bill. We are always strongest when we speak with one voice, as one nation in support of freedom and democracy. Tibet has a rich, peaceful heritage that the CCP attempted to erase when they invaded it in 1950, but they have failed. Their attempts to quash this vibrant history have failed because of the resilience of the Tibetan people. The U.S. strongly condemns all CCP oppression and coercion of Tibetans, as well as any CCP involvement in the secession of the Dalai Lama. Despite the CCP's attempts to erase the history and culture of Tibet over the last 70-plus years, it still remains vibrant, strong, and inspirational. Tibetans, like all people, have the right to religious freedom, which includes freedom from CCP surveillance, censorship, and detention. If the CCP truly does respect sovereignty, as it claims to, then they will engage in peaceful dialogue with the Tibetans to resolve this conflict, not force Tibet to accept a CCP proposal. Passing this bill demonstrates America's resolve that the CCP's status quo in Tibet is not acceptable. And I can think of no greater message or gift to the Dalai Lama and the people of Tibet than the swift passage of this bill to get to the President's desk as soon as possible to help put the people of Tibet in charge of their own future. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.